Delighted to say that journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth is still joining me here in the studio. A very good morning once again to you.
Good morning. Glad someone's delighted I'm here.
You do get quite a lot of hate from our audience when you're on. I mean, he's a nice guy. I mean, he's wrong about some things, but aren't we all? I mean, I'm not, obs. But Benjamin, we had something of a heated debate.
You did.
We did have a heated debate a little bit earlier about Shabana Mahmood and you know how many asylum seekers we should take in this country, and I think the British public are getting to zero, and we really are there, and that will be the liberal, lefty, wishy-washy, bleeding heart, hand-wringing types like you that have pushed us to that position, because you guys wouldn't fail to ever put a number on it. Tory wishy-washy lot failed to put a number on it. People are done. They really think that actually times are pretty hard. We like to look after ourselves. They've seen the economic cost of these people, both legal and illegal, actually, overall. They have seen the damage to our culture, damage to law and order, the threat to young women and girls. They have seen the massive change to our high streets, to local areas, change to our politics. You know, the Gaza MPs who are now trying to influence Labour Party government policy when it comes to foreign affairs. They have seen the impact. They don't like it. They don't want any more of it, and they're done. I mean, isn't this just common sense? I
mean, I think there's been a massive shift, not just in where the centre ground is, but also in where the Labour Party sees this. Shabana Mahmood, as Home Secretary, announced these big reforms yesterday, and there were 18 MPs, Labour MPs, who came out against them. So that's people like Nadia Whittome, who's on the left of the party,
suspects.
Or Stella Creasy, who some people will know.
If Stella Creasy is against something, I'm for it. It's just that simple.
Do you know, someone senior in Downing Street recently described Stella Creasy as the most irrelevant Labour MP. She is a faction of one. She's not on the left of the party.
Stella Creasy represents Stella Creasy.
I think that's a fair description. That's certainly what people inside the Labour Party say.
I don't think she likes me.
Really?
I'm going out on a limb here.
Well, at least, she's that's a bigger faction, but but you know, I've been texting around Labour MPs this morning to ask, are people angry? Is there going to be a revolt on this? And actually, it sounds like Labour MPs are actually quite relieved. This is the issue that they're constantly harangued about on the doorstep. It is the issue that makes them most concerned they won't win their constituencies at a next election. And so I don't think
certainly the red wall.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, you know, there are more than 400 MPs. Loads of them are in.
But there is that issue that you've got a load of who the biggest threat to them is from the Lib Dems and the Greens and the sort of the leafy southern constituencies, and they are getting very, very worried that they're going to face threats there. And of course they're all hand wringing and bleeding hearters and no borders, everyone welcome in people.
I mean, I don't think there'll be a revolt on this. I think Labour will get it through. The question is probably
there will be some revolt.
There'll be some revolt, but not a meaningful one. And also the question really will be about how it fits with the law. So whether some of these things can be enforced in reality, things like changing the right to family life under ECHR. But I would point...
No, but I don't think you do need to change the law. You just need to enforce the second paragraph of Article 8, which basically says you have every right to do this.
Well, I mean, I would disagree with people like Kemi Badenoch seems to say this, Nigel Farage, that you have to leave the ECHR because this plan that the government's putting forward is based on Denmark, which is in the ECHR. Not only that, this plan was put in under a Labour government in Denmark. And so, you know, there is actually a left-wing precedent for following this example.
But we're discussing this on the show, and everyone's saying follow the Danish thing. OK, it's a much smaller country. They've not been dealing with quite the same crisis, but they've basically shipped people off to other EU countries, a different thing they can do. But also, crucially, they've got the fact that you have to speak Danish for good high standard of Danish. Well,
which is hard.
That's hard, yeah. But whereas English is the lingua franca of the world, for better expression, and lots of people will speak it, so you just don't have the same issue there. Shabana Mahmood, I mean, she got in trouble with the Deputy Speaker, Caroline Noakes, yesterday because she used some very unparliamentary language about the abuse she's got. But let's just play a quick excerpt. Don't worry, we're not actually playing. We have to beep out the words that she used about. But you'll know the language she used. She called herself, said she'd been called the effing P word, and this is talking about people, a Lib Dem. White Lib Dem MP was saying, no, you're stoking division. And this is what Shabana Mahmood had to say.
Unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see, and that it is all, in fact, just extremist right-wing talking points. But this system is broken, and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken the system is.
I mean, again, look, this on Parliament, you're not even allowed to call someone a liar in Parliament. So I'm not allowed to, certainly not allowed to say the F word and the P word. I mean, certainly not on air, we're not allowed to either. But I mean, and quite rightly, I think. But it is, I mean, it is interesting that her argument that, well, you know, because of racism and because a mass uncontrolled immigration has stoked racism, and I'm the victim of it, and other people of colour are the victim of it, and therefore we need to do something about it. But that's not the reason. There are millions of people who are concerned about mass uncontrolled immigration, including myself. I'm not remotely racist. I don't have I'm sorry, I don't have a racist bone in my body, and it's nothing to do with the colour of anyone's skin. It is simply to do with whether or not people are making a contribution, and whether it's our job to take in all the wastrels and strays from the rest of the world. And I don't think it is.
I mean, I think she's making a powerful point that she doesn't need to be lectured by a white Liberal Democrat man on what division looks like. She knows that because she's the child of immigrants.
I'm not very keen on debates where it's like, well, you haven't got, you know, it's like Owen Jones saying to me, you're not a gay man, so you can't comment on something to do with gay people, which she said to me before, or you know, people saying because I'm black and therefore, you know, you don't have a comment because you're white on something else. I don't think that people's, you know, immutable characteristics are the reason why you're allowed to have something to say. Do you have something useful to say on a topic because you know about it and you have a valid opinion? That's why you can or can't talk about something, not because of what happens to be your skin pigmentation or your sexuality or whether you're man or a woman.
But in the case of what racist anger and vengeance looks like, she knows about that from personal and family experience. And I suppose she's also saying that, you know, people who are racists, that obviously exist, will exploit this kind of division and anger to have an excuse to be more racist, to be more vocal. And who is it that sees the consequences of that? Well, it's people that look like Shabana Mahmood. And of course, here's the thing.
By the way, does she pronounce her name like that?
I've always heard it as Mahmood. I think.
No, I'm intrigued.
I'm pretty sure it's Mahmood.
Okay, whether I'm mispronouncing it or you're mispronouncing it.
We'll soon find out. But I think that also, you know, she's saying that we need a consensus on asylum. Otherwise, there will be what you describe of people wanting no asylum seekers. That's certainly not something that people on the left would want. And also, it's, you know, she is an example of the integration she's talking about. The child of immigrants who has legal migrants who has integrated into society, clearly been very productive, very successful.
She went to a good grammar school. Labour are opposed to grammar schools. It's amazing how many of them went to good schools they're opposed to now.
And I think Shabana Mahmood is a great example of integration, and so she's a natural spearhead for this kind of argument. Whereas, you know, someone like Carla Denyer, the co-leader of the Green Party, he was furious at the Home Secretary.
Oh, very angry.
She said there's no such thing as illegals.
I know, they don't believe in borders.
Except
they don't believe in borders.
In one of the 4 Green Party constituencies, they refused to have. They complained about housing immigrants, you know, refugees in a centre there. So you can't have it both ways.
Well, they all know. The left always wants it both ways. That's why it's incoherent. Fascinating stats that were out this morning from the Office for National Statistics. They had previously estimated that the number of Britons who left Britain in the year of 2024 was 77,000 people who just not went on holiday. I mean, that's 77,000 is just me going in and out of the country. But actually left the country. That's it. I'm done. I'm moving abroad for work, for retirement or whatever it is. They've now realised they've got it wrong. I'm not sure why we even bother having any official stats anymore, because all they do is revise them and say they've got it wrong. They got it so wrong. It wasn't 77,000 Britons who left. It was 257,000. That's not like, oh, it was 87,000. It was 257,000 people who left. Now, here's the thing. There'll be retirees going, yeah, I'm done. I'm just going to go and sit in the south of France or in Spain, have a nice life, or whatever. People going off to New Zealand, to Australia, for a new life. I know an awful lot of young people who are actually moving to countries like Greece, to Cyprus, to Italy, to Portugal, where they are offering great deals on, like, you don't have to pay income tax for a year, and then you get a lower rate, but they want to encourage, you know, young people to go. Now, this is the thing, and that was always the argument about immigration to this country. You know, there's an argument for, like, taking, top students, the economically, people who are going, right, I've got these amazing skills, I want to come to your country, the brightest and the best, people who are going to movers and shakers. My worry is, we've probably lost a few thousand influencers, those women with the big lips,
digital
and the weird,
nomads.
and the sort of the weird eyelash, the crazy weird cartoonish ladies. We've probably lost a bunch of them to Dubai. I can live with that. Bye-bye. Thanks for, the average IQ of the country's gone up massively. But I don't care about it. But we will also have lost a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of really hardworking people, a lot of people, especially in the tech industries, where, as you say, they can literally work on a beach in Greece and actually get their job done. They're not on the payroll from the local council pretending to take calls. They actually are doing a job where they're getting money, they're wheeling and dealing. We're losing those people. We're losing their entrepreneur skills. We're losing their tax. We're losing their influence on our local societies. We're losing their kids, who are going to be more likely to be get-up-and-go kids as well. This is an absolute disaster for our country.
I mean, the ability to go to other countries, especially if you have a digital job, which is obviously relatively normal these days, countries like Thailand.
I'm going to start doing my show from the Maldives.
Well, I think you're there enough, aren't you? So maybe. But, you have countries like Thailand, there are Caribbean countries where you can basically just walk in and get a work visa for a digital operation because they desperately want those relatively high-value workers. Yeah. But there's
spend money in the local economy.
But, we can't compete with the sort of, 5% income tax or something they have in the UAE and in Dubai.
No.
We can't compete with that. And the world has fundamentally changed. The ability to migrate, we see it in good and bad ways, is never been easier, and it's not getting harder.
But there's a very big difference between someone paying 5% or nothing in Dubai, and someone basically paying effectively for some incomes pretty much over half of their income in tax, and going, what's the sodding point?
I mean, I think some people don't realise, for young workers who've been to university, the effective tax rate they're paying on an income of like 35 grand is over 50%.
Yeah.
My student loan repayments are £600 a month.
A month?
Now, obviously, it's relative to my income, but just compare that to a middle-aged person.
And by the way, those
you're
not paying back the loan, you're just paying the interest.
Indeed. I actually went and looked at how much I paid off, thinking I must have nearly done it. I was on the same as I was when I graduated because of the interest rate, which is insane.
It is completely
wrong. We have so many taxes and deductions in this country but it's not as straightforward as just income tax. I can see why young people feel
that way. What do you think about these budget plans? We've got the budget next Wednesday. Everyone thinks it's going to be an absolute disaster. We presume we had that concern about a challenge to challenge to Keir's, don't careful what you wish for, a challenge to Keir Starmer from Wes Streeting or others in the aftermath of the budget, because as one of my guests pointed out, what did Downing Street know about how bad it's going to be? And of course, we've now got Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, the Tory leader. She's been on air since 10 o'clock this morning, basically giving a joint press conference with Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, about what they were doing. Massive big cuts to the welfare budget. They want to make £47 billion worth of savings, including £23 billion from the welfare bill, saying if Labour get rid of the plan to have the two-child benefit gap, they're going to bring it back in. I mean, I 100% support her on that. But also, we've got the Reform leader, Anzia Youssef, his policy chief, been announcing what they want to do, massive welfare reforms, but also cutting foreign aid to £1 billion. There is now almost, the Overton window has moved, There is now a race on the right to move towards benefit cuts, and a lot of that is because, let's face it, these people are not voting for parties that want to cut their benefits. They're on the Labour payroll. There's lots such as they do vote, but also there are so many people, the workers, the strivers, people who are trying to get on in life, and even people who are on minimum wage but doing the right thing, who are just saying, I cannot be taxed anymore, while him next door does sod all day and watches daytime telly. Hi, if you're watching.
But I think all the parties are being dishonest on this question of cutting welfare, because the cost of pensions is £166 billion a year.
What do you want to do? Kill off the pensioners?
No, but why should they get above inflation rises every year?
Because they've got the lowest pretty much the lowest pension in Western Europe.
But that's not true, because it's when you combine state pension with employee pensions, it doesn't work out as the lowest at all.
Employee pensions.
But the idea that we should be increasing it beyond inflation, 4.8%, an extra £5 billion on the pension bill. Now, I don't think they should get a cut in their pension. Of course I don't. But why should they be getting more than inflation when nobody else is?
There is, okay.
That is a massive part of the bill.
And this was the triple a triple lock on pensions. I don't think the triple lock survives the next general election. I think the reality check.
No party is being honest about that.
No.
And that
because you know why?
is a bigger chunk than anything else.
Because older people vote.
They do.
That's why no one cares about people who are 20. You can do what you can say what you want. You're 18 or 20. If your cohort doesn't actually turn out to vote, no one cares. You have to vote for people to care what you think. That's why they do what the older people want. But a lot of these people say, I've paid in for years now. The fact is that most people have not paid in any lump sum at all that would even cover their pension. The idea that you can work for 40 years and then be retired 30 years is delusional. It's utterly delusional. And look, my age, we're going to see retirement rates going up for state pension. Your age group, I mean, good luck.
I'll still be paying my student loan off.
Out of your pension when you get it at 80.
Yeah.
No, but this is the thing. A lot of it is unsustainable. There's a lot of very sensible people, a lot of people who really understand and now the numbers work, who are saying we are headed for a very big fall. Our numbers are unsustainable. So are France's, so are Germany's. It's all heading to madness. And no politicians are really being, even Nigel Farage, who's a straight talking as they come on this stuff, is really being honest and saying, guys, we are living way beyond our means. I mean, I was someone who during furlough went, I really support furlough. If we're going to have lockdown, then obviously didn't want us to have more lockdowns, so there wouldn't be more furlough. But even I was saying really early on, and said to Rishi Sunak when he was Chancellor, your Father Christmas right now, you're going to be the, Scrooge in a few months' time. Did people think we weren't going to have to pay the money back, guys?
I mean, to put this in context, when the pension was brought about, the average life expectancy was 50. Today, a third of people born today will live to see their 100th birthday. And so that is a fundamental change. It's a miracle. It's a fantastic success of human ingenuity that we live that long. But it means you can't have these pensions for half your life. You can't have the same amounts paying in to get that amount out.
Okay.
And so, we have to change it. But
here's the thing. I mean, as much as I'm concerned about that, and with an ageing population, as you say, well, an ageing population, what we need more young people to have kids, but they can't have kids if they've got loads of debts, they can't buy a home.
Well, we need immigrants, don't we? We need immigrants, then you change the demographics.
No, do you know what? Immigrants also get old.
Yeah, but
mind-blowing idea. They also age. They're not immune to ageing.
But the projections for the UK economy into the middle of this century put us as doing much better than most European countries
because we've had an immigrant population.
Because we'll have a better proportion of workers.
If an awful lot of those immigrant workers who we brought in are earning and contributing themselves more than they are costing the state, and that their kids will also do so. Statistically, the mass immigration we have had, particularly from the Indian subcontinent, that's not the case.
Well, I think particularly, hang on, Indians are the richest demographic in Britain.
Subcontinent. So when you're looking at Pakistan and Bangladesh in particular, very high rates of unemployment. Actually, the Indian rate of unemployment, Indian migrant, is actually higher than indigenous white Brits in this country. Interestingly, it's been a much more successful cohort of people who've emigrated to this country. So there are lots of different things, and each individual will be completely different. Who's someone who's come from any country who's turned out to be brilliant. You could have a Canadian who's been no use whatsoever, who's been on the dole the whole time. I mean, I'm not saying each individual.
My family did come from Canada.
Each individual represents everything. I'm half Irish immigrant. History. I mean, it's different for every person, but we need to be a lot more choosy about who we take in. But actually, what we really want is more people in this country to be able to have babies. We want people to be able to settle down, buy a home, have children themselves.
That's why you should lift the two-child benefit cap so that people can have an easier route to afford their kids. Because we desperately need people to have more kids.
People should get jobs so they can afford the kids. Why would you just like people to be able to have two kids?
Enough. The housing is so expensive.
The two-child benefit cap is largely paid to people who don't work.
You can hardly house yourself, let alone have a kid.
You want unemployed people to have 3 or 4 children.
No.
They can't afford the first 2 they've got, and then they're on universal credit. They don't work enough to support their own kids, and you want us to go, let's tax someone else who is working really hard and can't afford to have another kid themselves. You want to tax them more to pay for Mr. and Mrs. Unemployed to have another kid they still can't afford.
Look,
Are you kidding me?
No.
And you think their kid is likely to be a top entrepreneur, changing the world, curing cancer? No, statistically, their kid is likely to also be on the dole.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't want them to have more kids.
I'm the kid of 2 criminals from a council estate,
and you are the one who bucked the trend.
And turned out fine. The idea that the child is responsible for the parent's situation is completely
No, the parents are
wrong.
responsible for the child's situation. If you've got 2 kids and you're still on universal credit, you can't afford to support your kids, and mum isn't working and dad's working 2 days a week, if that, and you can't support your kids, you should not have a 3rd kid. And the only person responsible for your 3rd child not living a great life is you.
Society is responsible that no child lives in poverty, regardless of who their parents are.
That's the choice of the parents.
And
well, then we'll take that child into care then, shall we?
Most people don't plan on having 3 or 4 or 5 children. You know,
a lot of families do,
just what happens.
Contraception is free in this country.
But I'm afraid people get excited, Julia.
Millions of couples don't have another child. They don't have a 1st child or a 2nd child or a 3rd child because they can't afford to have them.
And they should be able to afford it, and they should be helped by this.
And they can't, partly because we're paying massive benefits and paying massive taxes to fund people who aren't making a contribution, who do sod all day, who can't look after their own kids, can't be bothered to get off their own backsides to look after their own kids, and expecting other people to pay for them. And we're done. No more.
But if you don't let those kids have a fair access to schooling and to education and to quality of life.
Free education, free contraception, free school meals. How much more do they want?
Well, they should get everything because they're
everything.
children.
Let's put them in a palace.
And if you don't give those children a good quality of life, then they will turn into people that don't get an education and are unemployed and aren't productive members of society.
No, we're encouraging the feckless parents to have
wrong.
more children. They can't afford.
But hang on, you're saying that many of these people that have 3 or 4 kids are unemployed. Well, that's the case when
They're on universal credit, which is a benefit for people who are also working, but the vast majority of them are not working. That's the case when they don't get child
benefit, and so that doesn't make your argument make sense.
What?
The fact is, if they're having those kids right now, the difference would be that those kids have a better quality of life if you extend the benefit.
I'm sorry, they would have a better quality of life if mum and dad went out to work.
Yes, of course they would.
But then why is it my responsibility to pay more tax to pay for the parents to sit at home?
But you can
when the parents can solve the situation themselves.
You can create other situations.
Why am I paying for someone to be on Ozempic on the NHS when they can pay for it themselves by having fewer takeaways?
Look, as a taxpayer, I want my money to say that there aren't 10-year-olds in this country living in poverty and not being fed and clothed appropriately.
Yes, so let's not pay parents. Are you under? This is the thing. Stop. Everyone on the left's under this illusion that people, at the bottom of society, don't make the same rational choices as everyone else. Which is, I don't get a bigger council flat, and I don't get more money in my pocket by having another kid. So they don't have another kid. That's literally the decision that people make.
Clearly, the cost of a child is more than the benefits you get for it. It's a very expensive decision to make.
It very much depends on your parenting. I can assure you.
Your argument has to accept that you think it is okay. You think it is morally justified in a society as rich as ours that there should be kids that aren't being fed and clothed and educated appropriately. I don't think that is
They go to state schools, they can be educated. There is nobody in this country who can't afford to feed and clothe their child.
Of course there is.
That's rubbish. There are feckless parents who choose to spend it on heroin and alcohol, but that's not them not being able to
unemployment
afford it.
benefit of, what is it, something like 70 quid a week can afford all those things? That's ridiculous.
They don't get that if they. I'm sorry, that's not what they get if they've got kids. What with the free housing and all the extra benefits and the child benefit, $3,500 a year per child. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. I mean, look, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree.
One of my best friends works on the benefits office on the counter with the glass screen. She knows it. I can assure you, as she's very clear, there ain't anybody who can't afford to clothe and feed their children. End of. Nothing to discuss. They're choosing not to.